In 2014, it was nearly impossible to escape the name Your Lie in April. It made almost every Best of the Year list and has probably made it onto a few Best of All Time lists. The trailers showcased classical piano and violin pieces against a backdrop of gorgeous, lush pastel colors. Despite being a genre that I generally avoid, it was even able to find itself in the bottomless pit that is my watch list. And it stayed there for 5 years, otherwise it wouldn't have ended up as a part of the series. I wouldn't say that it is impossible to find negative feedback for the series, but the numbers are clear. A series that is no longer airing, isn't shonen, or a Studio Ghibli film staying that high up in the top 50 for so long is definitely impressive. It managed to make a lasting impact on so many people and was no doubt probably one of the first pieces of art to move some of you to tears. That is no small accomplishment, and I respect art that is able to move the people that are lucky enough to have experienced it. Ultimately, I also feel that Your Lie in April is a story that was told exactly as the team behind it wanted it to be. I never got the feeling that they didn't know what they wanted to do with the story, and it never came off to me as something that was sloppy or rushed to any degree. I feel confident in saying that this is exactly the story that these artists wanted to tell and how they wanted to tell it. With that being said, I hate everything about Your Lie in April. Shows like this will often look fantastic in trailers and the random GIFs that you see on Reddit or Tumblr, but it's a lie. Your Lie in April is very stylistically inconsistent. There are moments of smooth, lovely animation, but it's placed between still images, suddenly flat colors, and CGI hands. I still can't decide which is worse: several minutes without animation or the motherfucking CGI hands. There are episodes that contain all of these things in a single scene, and the transitions are often startling and not graceful at all. There's a lot of recycled animation in places where it just isn't necessary, and we're already getting flashbacks to the first episode by episode 3. Okay, you know what? I have figured out what's worse than CGI hands. Kosei's glasses. Anytime we see his profile, the sides of his glasses are invisible. Every single time this happens, it is all that I can think about. Kosei is over here waxing poetic about his mommy issues, and all I can see are his gravity-defying glasses. How are they staying on his face? How? I thought this show was about classical music, not his magical glasses. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I thought, you know, maybe he has those glasses that are transparent on the side so that your peripheral vision isn't totally ruined. That makes sense. Until you see his glasses from another angle and they're solid and not see-through at all. I know this is such a petty complaint, but it is so obnoxiously in plain sight and happens dozens of times every episode, and I hate it so much. If they felt it was necessary to do that, they probably shouldn't have included the glasses in Kosei's character design. A similar technique was employed a few times when something was in the foreground blocking the character's face. Instead of just not having the thing in the foreground, they make the section that is covering the face invisible. It's dumb, and I hate it, and definitely more work than just not drawing the thing. Stop it. Also, can we please move past those cartoony, exaggerated facial expressions? It feels so dated, especially in something that leans into so many modern visual cues in Japanese animation. I found these moments less humorful and more distracting to the serious and somber tone that the series was trying to establish. Every time one of those sweat drops or head veins makes an appearance, it rips you from a harsh, unfair reality and abruptly shoves you into a daytime cartoon. To sum up nearly every joke, the setup is an innocent misunderstanding that frames Kosei as a pervert. Kaori or Tsubaki get real mad at him. This then descends into screaming at him and making those cliche anime expressions and beating the shit out of him. But don't worry, it's funny because a girl is beating up a guy. Oh wow, so funny, never been done before. Screaming and making funny faces isn't the same as making a joke unless you're Hanako Honda and this is Asobi Asobase. This isn't to say that a serious story shouldn't have humor. It should. It brings much needed levity and an odd sense of humanity to something that could potentially feel very unrelatable to the audience. Comedy can keep a story like this grounded. But this speaks to a much broader issue with the way the story is told in Your Lie in April. And it is told through a series of cliches and tropes. A lot of them. The entire show relies on Kaori being a very by-the-book manic pixie dream girl, kind of acting as Kosei's main point of character growth. I would actually argue that every female character only exists for Kosei's benefit. Tsubaki is the childhood friend that acts as a substitute mommy and can't tell if she's actually in love with him or just wants to adopt him. Kaori single-handedly cures his depression and, despite being terminally ill, has made this her literal life's purpose. Hiroko exists to be the one to repent for his mother's crimes and repair their relationship post-mortem. Nagi is a Kaori replacement that literally falls into his lap. Amy and Kaori actually play nearly the same role and could have easily been the same character. Conveniently, all of these girls have the same hobby: Kosei. Maybe they should start a support group. By this point, I have assaulted you all with the word cliché so many times that you probably never want to hear it again. And no, the irony of that is not lost on me. There is a way to celebrate and utilize these things, but I just don't think that Your Lie in April was able to pull it off, unlike some of its contemporaries. The overuse of these conventions creates a story that is entirely predictable. From the first episode, and I am absolutely not exaggerating, I made a note of how I thought the story was going to play out. When Kaori and Kosei first meet, she coughs a little when she's done playing the melodica, and she cries. My note reads as follows. Kao is coughing, a not-so-subtle hint that she has an undisclosed terminal illness, and her death will mark MC's only character growth. Calling it now. I have watched, read, and listened to this exact story play out so many times that I was even able to guess that they would never give Kaori a definitive diagnosis. I hadn't even remembered Kosei's name yet. That should not be possible, and I don't think that it was just a lucky guess. Every attempt at foreshadowing in this show is less like a shadow and more like a billboard flashing, Kaori is going to die! There wasn't a single moment that left me feeling surprised because so much was telegraphed. The final episode revealing that all of this was orchestrated by Kaori did little more than make me roll my eyes. I wasn't moved by this final act of love. I was exhausted by it. The ways that they decide to reveal Kaori's illness in the earlier episodes are completely tone deaf. The scene that illustrates this best is when Kaori is watching Kosei's first competition. Completely disregarding any established pacing or tone, they do a fade-in, fade-out cut to the women's restroom right in the middle of the episode. It zooms in on Kaori's bag that is, of course, full of pills, and she immediately storms out while every other girl in the bathroom screeches, "Damn, that's a lot of pills!" But that is just how characterization is handled in Your Lie in April. This story is told through dialogue, be it internal or otherwise, and as the audience, we always know how we're supposed to feel. We know when we're supposed to be sad, we know when we're supposed to laugh, because they are going to tell us in explicit detail through dense, repetitive prose that does little more than weigh the script down. Melodramatic internal monologues are the anime version of a laugh track. It holds your hand and drags you where it wants you to go. Good character writing should get you there without you even realizing that it happened. But I guess subtlety is for people who have time to think. Speaking of time, here's the Your Lie in April cliché lightning round. Love triangles are bad and you should feel bad. Is that a JoJo reference? Man, puberty hit these kids like a truck. That's only a 2-year age gap. 2! And finally, we arrive at what I think is the most egregious and poorly handled cliché in Your Lie in April: Kosei's mother. I have a lot of complicated feelings about how this plot point was executed, so it's kind of difficult for me to explain this clearly, so just bear with me for a moment. Saki is dying. She has a very young child who has taken an interest in piano. She has a husband, but it is never clear where he is, just that he is away on a business trip. While his wife, the mother of his child, is dying. It would have made more sense if they were divorced and Kosei's father ghosted, but that is not what was done here. Instead, Saki seems to be completely alone in raising her son. So, she makes the only logical decision possible in these dire circumstances. Instead of wasting her time and creating happy memories with her son, she decides to turn Kosei's early childhood into an everyday, brutal classical piano boot camp. The things that Saki does to Kosei for the sake of giving him a clear career path are abhorrent. Saying that she filled the role of Tiger Mom would be a massive understatement. She leaves him battered, bruised, and bloodied on a regular basis. There was no amount of stress or struggle that could have ever justified Saki's abuse of her son. And yet, that is exactly what they tried to do. Whether it was through flashbacks to before she was ill, or to a melodramatic monologue explaining her motivations, there was this constant need to push the audience to be sympathetic of Saki's situation. Despite the fact that Kosei is so traumatized that he seems to have PTSD-induced selective hearing. Personally, I'm more partial to the theory that his hearing issues might be due to brain damage from being hit in the head with a cane too many times. It even pulls that whole, "the last thing I ever said to my mom before she died was I hate you," or whatever, which is a clear moral stance that is targeted at a very young audience. The message is, it doesn't matter if your parents hit you hard enough to give you literal brain damage, don't ever stand up for yourself because parents die, and that's sad. I just cannot get behind this at all. Not only is this cliche as fuck, it's borderline irresponsible. A complicated parent-child relationship where both parties are at fault can be done, but this is not it. Kosei is a victim, bottom line, and any attempt to portray him as guilty is unacceptable. Although, I will say that the way they demonstrate Kosei's inability to hear his own playing was done quite well. If you've ever played around with a keyboard that isn't plugged in, this is a very familiar sound. It's a small detail, but definitely an example of brilliant sound design. There's actually a lot of that present here. I feel like some of it gets undercut by being over-explained, especially during the competition scenes, which is an unfortunate side effect of not trusting your audience to pick up on those subtle shifts in playing. I understand that the purpose is to include those that aren't familiar with these pieces of music, but that bit of narration is still placed in the foreground of the music. It's pretty clear that in almost every instance, they value the mass appeal of the series more than the music that the series is trying to celebrate. I guess to wrap this all up, Your Lie in April is a cliche, tone-deaf melodrama that has been done before and has been done better. It may be confident in the execution of its material, but at least for me, it just does not work. I will say that it's an excellent introduction to classical music. There are probably some of you out there that hear a Chopin piece and all you can think about is Your Lie in April, and all of the feelings that it brought with it. And that is such a beautiful thing. Film is one of the best gateways to other hobbies. I may hate it, but I mean, it sits at very nearly a 9 out of 10 on my anime list, so what the fuck do I know?
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.